Hello, friends. Good afternoon. Good day to you. This is Dr. Michele for Coffee Break. So, yes, my time today is different. I'm sorry that, I am changing some time because I want to go live here at Coffee Break and still serve you, even though that you're watching on replay, you're watching on live, this live stream. So, I hope that you join me. So, we're again, hello. Hello, then, Mr. Kutz Alignay. Um, I hope that you can join me for the next 30 minutes. I would like to go deep into this topic na tingnan natin kung paano tayo nagko-cope. Tingnan natin if we're coping with compassion. Tingnan natin or we're just, trying to cope. Trying to cope sa lahat ng nangyayari. Ang dami bang nangyayari? Yes, tumataas yung dollar. The kids would have to go to face-to-face schooling. COVID is still existing, and many of us are trying to work remotely, but others are being called to do face-to-face work. And then it seems that our lives are normal, but it's not really normal yet. So let's see how we're actually coping. And why is it important for us to talk about it? Because for all you know, baka you are trying to cope pero hindi naman healthy yung ginagawa mo. Kaya yan talaga yung reason why I like us to go deep into this topic. You think that you're coping well, you're coping healthy, or you might be coping negatively. Hindi naman sa negative ka, pero yung ginagawa mo ay hindi nakakatulong sa iyong well-being. So sa tingin nyo, where are you here? Are you coping well in spite of all the challenges and changes happening now? Or you're just merely coping? Other people are not even coping. It's so hard for them. So, okay, my first question. Let's throw the first question. Um, when you're stressed, what do you do? Like in a regular work day, like now, or you encounter a difficult situation, a stressful situation, and you're stressed, what do you do? Anong ginagawa mo? What is it that you do whenever you're stressed? What is it that you do when you have difficulty with something? How do you handle a stressful situation? For example, difficult people that you encounter, difficult staff, difficult boss, difficult client, difficult housemates or family members. What do you do and how do you deal with them? Magandang isipin yun. So, for example, also that there's a process at work na wala kang magawa, but there's a process na parang, ang hirap naman ito. Paano ko 'to i-ha-handle? So ayan, paano mo siya? How are you trying to cope? So let's look at what coping skills are. It's important for us to note that in this line of conversation on well-being, wellness, let's look at what how coping skills are defined. Coping skills, as said by, I think I read this in the book by Pamela Hayes, Dr. Pamela Hayes. She said that coping skills are conscious and unconscious ways we hold, navigate, and process the feeling of emotional or mental over. Coping skills are conscious and unconscious way we hold, navigate, and process the feeling of emotional or mentally being overwhelmed. Um, Ali Rothrock in Psychology Today also wrote that it may be positive or healthy, or it also may be negative. And we all learn that growing up. That's the thing with coping skills. You are not actually consciously aware na ito na palang ginagawa mo. Like for example, you're stressed, you're already holding your breath. For example, there's an issue that need to be dealt with. But rather than trying to deal with it, you move away from it because that may be the pattern that you saw in your family. Hindi pinag-uusapan ng problema. Pag may issue, sige lang, inom na yan. So, inom mo na lang. So, o kaya manonood ka na lang ng TV. You're trying to distract yourself from it. And then, coping skills are different to different persons. May mga tao na pag namumroblema, pag nasistress, dinadaan sa dasal. Meron naman, ayaw naman aminin na nasistress na sila or ayaw aminin na there is a concern that they need to actually deal with. What about you guys? So, Belle said, breathe and distant myself muna. What about the others who are watching live? Ano ang inyong go-to? What's your go-to? And for those of you who are listening, what's your go-to whenever encounter any distress or any difficulty, what's your go-to coping skills? Can you identify? Can you try to check? Nasaan ba ako dito? Ano bang nangyayari sa akin? So, let's see if your coping skill, if your go-to coping skill, it's actually negative coping skill or it's actually positive coping skill or helpful. So what are negative coping skills? When we look at negative coping skills, these are things we do to decrease the stress or numb the pain that only help us short term. Somebody asked, what to do if the couple have different coping skills? Well, you need to understand each other. Kasi hindi mo naman mapipilit na, oh hindi, dapat ganito ka mag-cope. No, you cannot force that. It's actually very relative and subjective to the person. But what is important for us to see, is it negative or positive? Kasi negative, it's only short-term. Usually, negative coping skills are short-term. They only numb the pain. For example, para siyang um, tranquilizer that will numb the pain. So it's just like a band-aid. Negative coping skills are band-aid technique. We use this skill because they work but only for a while. Sandali lang. It gives temporary relief for the pain, but a momentarily it's actually bringing you relief, immediate relief, but hindi mo talaga hinarap kung ano yung concern. Negative coping skills can just be another thing. Negative coping skill becomes just another thing we have to overcome if it's used continuously at hindi talaga hinarap yung issue. If it's not possible to work out kung malalim yung problema, hindi kaya ng negative coping skills. So what could be negative coping skills? For example, this is the best explanation there. This is the band-aid technique. So pag nagkasugat, yung band-aid, okay, immediate relief, may betadine. So it will numb the pain. But sometimes there's no betadine, so you use the alcohol. Yes, nandun yung sugat, pero kung malalim yan, hindi kaya ng band-aid lang. Kahit na may betadine din, baka kailangan i-stitch. Baka kailangan lagyan ng antibiotics. So, hindi kaya ng betadine lang or ng alcohol lang at ng band-aid lang. But the more that we put the band-aid, the more that we just try, hindi, wag na lang yan, nalagyan na ng band-aid, na ayos na yan. Hindi mo sinuri kung gaano kalalim yung sugat. Hindi mo inalam, meron pa ba tong kailangan? Gaano ba yung extent ng damage? So if this is not met, chances are infection will happen because the amount of remedy that you put for a very grave issue or a very grave concern, it's not aligned. It's not correlated. Hindi ugma. Hindi tugma. So come to think of it, yung mga ginagawa mo to cope with stress. For example, ay nako, dinadaan ko na lang yan sa Netflix. Ayoko nang pag-isipin yung problema. Gusto ko good vibes lang. So, mag-Netflix na lang ako, dadaanan ko na lang sa soju or sa K-drama, mag-online shopping na lang ako. So, those could be negative coping skill. They actually numb or remove your focus from the issue, but the issues are still there. Hindi mo pa rin hinarap. So that's why it becomes negative. Kasi it has more dangerous effects later on. Nagpapatong-patong lang yung epekto. Kasi hindi mo naman hinarap. Andun pa rin yung problema. Binand-aid mo lang. So the next thing is positive coping skills. So what are positive coping skills? Things we do to decrease the stress that will help us long term. So things we do, yung mga magagawa natin to remove the stress that will help us long term. We utilize positive coping skills because they work for longer periods. So ito yung pwede natin gawin. For example, you got sick. For example, you got sick with COVID. And then you realize na parang, ay, ang hina pala ng, I had difficulty breathing when I had COVID. So it means that, tapos ang dali kong mapagod, ang dali kong ganito yung breathing pattern ko. So it means that your body might be speaking to you. But the short term is that okay, mag-i-inhaler ako. That can work short term. But long term, Long-term coping skills is putting more remedies like I will eat healthy, I will exercise, I will do kahit na 30 minutes walking a day or 30 minutes na exercise at home every day, dadagdagan ko pa. And those are long-term coping skills. They have long-term effects, and these are positive coping skills because they have long-term effects. So you have to realize that uh, these things can actually help. It will not make you feel good. Sometimes positive coping skills, positive nga siya, pero hindi siya automatic nakaka-feel good. Kasi minsan mahirap siya. Mahirap kaya mag-change ng diet pag nagkasakit. Mahirap kayang maglakad. Mahirap kaya mag-start ng exercise routine, lalo na kung ang dami mong ginagawa. So come to think of it, you just have to realize what could be beneficial in the long run. And that is positive coping skills. So you have to reflect, ay, sa mga bagay na ginagawa ko, positive coping skills ba yan or negative? Because for all you know, you just might be gliding through this pandemic. Hanggang ngayon, you are just gliding through this pandemic, but you're not really addressing the issues. You are not really doing something that your body, your mind, and your spirit will thank you for. Because everything that you do, you are just trying to put solution or action steps dun sa problema. Pero yung root ng problema, hindi mo sinusolusyonan. Make sense? So it's really coping skills need to be the positive, the healthy, and the long term so that it will ensure us that okay, I am also protecting my well-being. I don't want to run into further issue or your positive coping skills can actually be called you're trying to be proactive or you're trying to be protective. That I would like to avoid sickness in the long run. I would like to avoid problems in the long run. So akong sa akin, pag-usapan na natin to, ayusin na natin. Does that make sense, friends? So these are the difference. So short term, panandalian lang yan. Pag ginamit mo yun ng matagal, the more magkakaproblema. Alam nyo, mas maraming nangyayari dito, yung hindi pinapansin. Yung hindi pinapansin. Ang mahirap dito is that may mga tao gusto na nilang gawa ng paraan at may mga tao naman na ayaw nilang harapin. So, yes, tama ka dyan, Mia. Positive coping skill means more sacrifice. Yes, kasi you're sacrificing your time, you're sacrificing your effort, you're sacrificing your beauty. And sometimes, you just have to know that it's not feel good. Kasi madalas tayo gusto natin good vibes lang. Pero minsan yung good vibes, good vibes lang natin, toxic positive na tayo. Hindi na talaga natin sinusolusyonan yung problema. Lumalayo tayo sa problema. So you have to check your coping skills now. How are they affecting your well-being? If you think that your well-being is improving because you're putting positive coping skills, but then it might be doing you good. But if your well-being is suffering despite that you are having coping skills, baka naman short term lang yan. Baka naman i-check mo ha, baka naman puro add to cart, puro Netflix or K-drama binging or alcohol binging yung ginagawa mo, but not really addressing the problems. So, my favorite quote, I think madalas kong sabihin yan dito sa coffee break, di ba? Problems are not the problem. Coping is the problem. Yan ang sabi ni Virginia Satir, my favorite family therapist. And that is true. Hindi natin kayang kontrolin yung mga problemang mangyayari, pero how we cope with it makes the big difference. It makes a whole world of difference. So, let's see now. As I said earlier, these coping skills are mind tools. These are tools. These are tools in times of stress, in times that our thinking is becoming impaired from overthinking and too much things happening to us. Yun yung parang automatic we turn to them. But let's use the usual coping skills of people, as I said earlier, avoidance coping. Ito yung umiiwas. Ito yung tinatakbuhan ng problem. They distance oneself from the... So there are people who avoid avoidance coping. So they avoid the problem. They detach from it. Distract from the feeling or refusing to deal with the situation. I think ito marami. This is actually can become toxic because it will not succeed. hindi magiging healthy to in the long run. Because the problem is still there, iniwasan mo lang. Another thing, the problem focus coping. Ito yung long term, but you attempt to solve the source of the problem and stopping the stressor, pero minsan ito ang hirap. It can be time consuming, more stressors. Halimbawa, meron problema, you want to change the system, you wrote to the people involved. Yes, because I'm focused on the problem. Ito problema to, kung hindi nangyari to, hindi nangyayari to. So, di ba minsan ang haba ng, at minsan, pag problem-focused coping, hindi natin kontrolado yung ibang bagay. We are not in control of the other factors. If we want to solve the problem, we have that parang superhero complex that I can do something about it. I can talk to people. I can pull strings about this para lang ma-solve yan, para lang matulungan ako. And that's okay. But in the long run, it is helpful. Yes, but to what extent? You don't get the relief you need. And sometimes it can be very dragging, and it can sometimes be very harsh and time consuming, and minsan magastos pa, and that's long term. Oo nga, long term solution, pero sometimes ang mahirap dito, hindi mo kontrolado lahat ng bagay. So come to think of it, you want to solve the problem, pero minsan we're not in control of too many things. So, and then sometimes people go to avoidance coping. They just don't want to deal with the problem. So where will you go? As individuals, one of the ways that we can do it is what we call emotion focused coping. Emotion focused coping is that we're managing ourselves. Hindi natin kontrolado yung sitwasyon. Hindi mo kontrolado kung anong ginagawa ng ibang tao. Kahit sa tingin mo hindi siya healthy at ikaw healthy, sad to say, we cannot control other people even if we want to. So what we deal with is our emotions and how we cope. As I said earlier, problems are not the problem, coping is the problem. And the coping, our own coping. So let's remember that this is going to be about us. Coping with compassion is being compassionate with ourselves. Minsan, napapagod tayo nag-solve ng problema ng iba. Except na lang sa mga anak, dahil anak yun lalo na kung maliliit na anak. Pero kung matanda na yung anak mo at sinusolve mo pa rin ng problema niya, o kaya naman asawa, baka naman you're overfunctioning for your husband or your wife. The other person is supposed to be doing it because in the name of love, you're gonna do it, but you might be disabling the person or might be trampling on the self-esteem of the other person. So you have to check, so paano ko? Nasistress ako sa sitwasyon, ayoko nito. Here, when we say emotion focus, we're trying to manage the emotion associated with the situation. You try to minimize the negative reactions from the stressor. For example, the stressor, pinaalalahanan ka regarding a work-related matter. Pinaalalahanan ka ng colleague mo. And of course, kung work-related matter, it's not being demanding, but it's being realistic because everybody is just doing their job. And then you got suddenly triggered. Suddenly you said na, parang, ay nako, ayoko talaga nitong policy nyo na to. Ay, napapagod ako sa kahihingi nyo ng mga report na yan. Ay, paano ba natin babaguhin yan? Ayan. So, if that's the kind of reaction that you're managing, you have to know that everyone wants to be a part of the system and everyone is part of the organization and doing their work. So, emotion focus is that you're minimizing the negative reaction. One thing is that you try to think, hindi man makasolve ng problema, hindi mo man mabago yung sistema, pero tinulungan mo yung sarili mo. Tinulungan mo yung sarili mo. For example, nahihirapan ako dito sa report nito. Being kind to yourself and maybe being kind eventually to your colleagues is seeking social support. Sabi niya, pasensya ka na. It's also being humble to admit na nahihirapan ako dito on how I do it. So, kung nahihirapan ako, can I ask help or extension from you? So, that's seeking social support. And talking out your feelings. Like, talking out your feelings, alam mo, when you do this, nahihirapan ako. Pagbigay mo sa akin ng deadline, alam kong importante yung deadline, pero I feel pressured. So, it's not that you're trying to change the system, but you're expressing your emotion. You're being honest and kind to yourself. So, talking about your feelings, I feel pressured. So, hindi ko to pinapasolusyonan, sinasabi ko lang, I just feel pressured. And when you say it, maybe you're trying to admit when I'm pressured, and it's owning the emotion. You're owning the emotion is that, this is my feeling, I am pressured, I am stressed, I am pressed in this situation. It's okay. It's okay to be so. It's okay not to be okay right now. Kasi gano'n naman eh. It's okay kung nababurden ka. Kasama naman yun ng trabaho. And then it's also appreciating what you have. Thankfully, this system is put so that I can improve on my work. Thankfully, meron ganito kasi this is a way to keep me in my toes. I'm grateful because this will ease things up. It's also appreciating what you have. And importantly, it's learning from this stressful situation. So, okay, ang pwede ko palang gawin para hindi na lumala yung ganitong sitwasyon is agahan ko na lang yung paggawa ng report. Or itong sitwasyon na to, para hindi naman ako ma-stress pag deadline na, kailangan kong ayusin agad. Yan. So, emotion-focused coping is actually being honest with yourself, being aware of your emotions, being objective about the situation. While it's true that it's about emotion, it's not allowing ourselves to be swept off by the strong emotion. It's not being ruled by the emotion, but allowing the emotion to fuel us to improve, to fuel us to learn from the stressful situation, or allowing the situation to teach us, or allowing the emotion to teach us what is it that I can do to help myself. Magsi-self-pity na lang ba ako or hihingi ako ng tulong? So in improving social coping skills, the first thing that we can do is to improve face the stress or hindi mo madi-deal with, hindi mo maamin, kung hindi mo alam kung paano harapin na, ay, may concern pala, ay, nahihirapan pala ako, ay, talaga palang hindi ko siya maintindihan, hindi ko siya matutunan. Check if it's in your control or outside you. Consciously deal with things one at a time. One at a time, let's deal with things. Ay, teka lang, hindi ko pa to kaya, ito muna. And choose, and then when we try to check, to face the stressor, you'll realize na, ay, this is an opportunity for me to grow. Facing the stressor, it's not being too negative. It's being realistic. I am not for good vibes, good vibes. You listen to Coffee Break not because you want to feel good, but because you want to learn to be better. I am here with you to confront your issues, to help you in your path. Not because maganda akong pakinggan. Sana hindi niyo ako ginagawang radyo lang na magandang pakinggan. But because you would like to learn from what I'm saying. And that's one, is facing the stressor, facing the problem, learning to be better and confronting the issues that are ahead of you. So improving your coping skill, the first thing to do is face the stressor. The second, feel the emotion. Ito yung dito tayo nahihirapan. First, you have to name the feeling. I am irritated, I am getting tired, I'm getting exhausted. And to note, what could be the trigger? Ano ba yung nakatrigger sa naramdaman ko? Na-trigger ako nung tinanong ako kanina. So kung na-trigger ako, bakit nga ba ako na-trigger? And it does not stop. Some people would trigger you. Some situation would trigger you. But that's not the end of the story. You don't blame people when they triggered you. You need to check, what is my need? What is really my own issue? Ayun ang mahirap. Madalas, ayaw natin aminin yung issue natin. Madalas, ayaw natin aminin na kaya tayo na-trigger, meron tayong insecurity. Madalas, kaya hindi natin masusolusyonan at lalong nagfa-fired up at tayong nati-triggered sa emotion because we're trying to blame other people for letting that emotion happen. But that's actually called immaturity. Because emotions are uniquely ours and we're supposed to be responsible for our emotions. And no amount of pain, suffering can let other people make you feel that way because you allowed yourself to feel that way. You're the one feeling irritated. You're the one feeling frustrated. You're the one na naiinis. So ikaw mismo ang gagawa ng paraan to help yourself. And one of the things that you should do is don't judge yourself because that emotional state, it's actually a teacher. That's teaching you anong gusto kong matutunan sa sarili ko or anong kailangan kong makita sa sitwasyon na to, paano ko siya mai-improve. So, one is face the stressor and then feel and name the emotion. And don't judge your state. You have to label the emotion. And importantly, so that you can find appropriate solution. So, when you face the stressor and then you feel the emotion, you can find appropriate solution. Teka, paano ko ba ito gagawan? You have to check also, where is my energy going? Nagre-reklamo lang ako or ginagawan ko ng paraan? And you focus on the essential. Ano yung mas importante ngayon? Ay, ang mas importante ngayon yung peace of mind ko. So, hindi ako mga away ngayon, I would choose peace. Ay, ang importante sa akin, malaman ng ibang tao na hindi nila ako pwedeng i-put down. So, I will just going to tell them, I heard you, but I'm not allowing myself to be be affected by this situation. Ayan. So, this is focusing on the essential. Anong yung mahalaga sa'yo? Mahalaga sa akin matutunan ko yung sitwasyon today. Mahalaga sa akin mag-grow from this situation. Mahalaga sa akin makatulong. So, check also what is the appropriate thing. If you're frustrated with your situation, baka it's calling you to change something. Maybe if you cannot change the situation, you have to change how you think about things. You have to change how you deal with people. Maybe you have to change your tone. And it's inviting you na, ano nga ba ang pwede ko pang gawin? Ayan. And also, the important thing is, one of the things that you can actually practice the solution is that you have to put self-compassion there. Anong kinalaman? Kaya yung title nito, Compassion, Coping with Compassion. Because sometimes we're too harsh on ourselves. Palpak ka na naman. Ano naman yung ginawa mo, hindi mo na natutunan. Tayo mismo yung nagbigay ng judgment. Even other people are not judging us, but at the back of our heads, because of that irrational patterns in our head, we have those patterns that actually bring us down and put that self-compassion at stake. So friends, walang ibang maaawa sa sarili natin kundi tayo. Pero not to the point of self-pity, but turn your pity into self-compassion. Self-compassion is recharging our batteries. Teka lang I don't want to be burdened by this situation. So I will just pause. I will not reply to this chat. Hindi ko i-deal with tong toxic na tao na to because I deserve peace right now. Ayan. It's allowing yourself to be filled so that hindi mauubos yung mga, alam mo, minsan, ang pinakamahirap na i-deal with. How do you cope with difficult people? Lalo na doon sa mga emotional vampires. Lalo na doon sa mga tao na kahit anong sabihin mo, mali ka pa rin. May mga ganon. So, don't try to please them. If you know that the people you're dealing with are really going to be not good for your mental health, allow yourself to have more self-compassion. Pag alam mo na yung sitwasyon mo, parang deadlock, wala naman ako magagawa dito ngayon eh. Punuin mo na lang yung sarili mo. Give to yourself what you need. Maybe you need rest. Wala akong magagawa ngayon, ipapahinga ko na lang to. Nasabi ko na lahat ng sasabihin ko, I would just take a break for now. Yon. So that's being self-compassionate. Giving yourself, refilling yourself despite the difficult situation. Whatever issues you have, it's likely whatever issues and coping that you have, if you are coping negatively, it's likely that there's no self-compassion in the way you're coping. So it's important for you, paano ko ba inaalagaan yung sarili ko? Am I listening to my needs? Am I listening to the voice inside? Am I trying to solve problem all day? Na meron akong gustong mabago sa sistema, meron akong gustong mabago sa mga tao, pero hindi ko man lang pinakinggan yung pangailangan ko at yung sarili ko. Baka kailangan ko munang umupo, kailangan ko munang magpahinga, kailangan ko munang mag-coffee break. Because I would quote from Kristin Neff. She's a forerunner in the study of self-compassion. She said that rather than wandering around in problem-solving mode all day, thinking mainly of what you want to fix about yourself or your life, you can pause for a few moments throughout the day to marvel on what's not broken. In short, minsan gusto nating solusyonan lahat. Pero minsan ang kailangan lang to really confront the issue is to look at the blessings, to be grateful for what is there, kasi hindi naman natin kailangan solusyonan lahat right here, right now. And that's self-compassion. Marveling on your strength, marveling on your abilities, and how can you help yourself. And when we have self-compassion, when we become more compassionate about ourselves, our well-being flourishes. And we also, can flourish in life. Mas nagiging kinder and more loving tayo sa sarili natin. So we can have more to give our loved ones. We can have more to give the people around us. That's what self-compassion is. And I talk heavily in one whole chapter about self-compassion in my book, You Can Care for You, The Soul and Science of Self-Care. It's still available at Feast Books, and this month of September, it's only at 399. So add to cart na, because promise, this is like a journey with me. Para tayong holding hands na magre-retreat through You Can Care for You book. So I hope that you can take hold of that. And I hope that this helped you in this session. I hope that this is helpful. The points on self-compassion, the points on coping, because you can only cope better, you can only cope well if you do it with self-compassion. So sana may natutunan kayo. At habang inaalam ko, can you put that in the chat? Ano ang big word mo today? Ano ang natutunan mo today? Please put that in the chat. What is it that is important for you to take hold of today so you can apply it? Remember, emotion-focused coping is not changing the situation, but it's actually supporting yourself as you navigate the difficulty. So while you cope, you hope. While we hope, we can cope. When we cope, we can hope for the better days. So I hope that you put there in the comments your learnings for today. And I hope that you can also support Coffee Break. And if you want to support Coffee Break, you can send Facebook stars, or you can just send us a message to ask for our Gcash details so that you can support this coffee break session with Dr. Michelle. I hope this has blessed you. I hope that this is good for you. And I hope to see you again on another session of Coffee Break next week. So I hope that you refill yourself. Sabi mo nga, Mami Mia, we think about others when we say compassion. Binigay natin sa iba. Ang ganda palang meron self-compassion. Agree? And I will end with that, because self-compassion is giving yourself the same love and kindness, the same thing that you're giving to other people. So give it to yourself first so you can have more to give. You can care for you. Give yourself better love by giving yourself more compassion so you can cope with the distress of life more. God bless you, everyone. See you again next week.